I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and today we'd like to talk to you about new beginnings. In all of our lives, we have a series of endings and new beginnings, and sometimes in the midst of the end of an experience in life, we aren't able to see the new beginnings, but there are always new things happening in our lives to take the place of the old things that have passed away or moved on. I guess before we talk about the endings of life and seeing the new beginnings, there are a lot of just plain new beginnings that people enjoy and like to experience. And one of those, we were just talking before the program about babies. That's a new beginning that we can all relate to, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and everyone loves babies, and even they might not like to hear them cry or carry on, everyone is inspired by babies. And I'd like to say for the record that I think the new babies that are coming in are more advanced, and you can see it everywhere. And of course, I have two grandbabies that I think are special, but I think all the babies today show a greater advancement, and they know what we're saying when we speak to them, and they make eye contact. And I've seen babies making eye contact immediately after they're born. And other people say, well, that's not possible. But it is possible. And it's not only possible, but I've seen it happen. So these babies today are more advanced. And some people say, well, it's because of television. Well, these newborn babies haven't gotten that far yet. But it's inspiring, isn't it, to know that civilization has advanced a spiral. And that's what I would say has happened.
Uh-huh. And as civilization has advanced, it's because of the openness that we have or need to have to new beginnings and to let old things pass away. And I'm not talking about people necessarily, but life is a process, isn't it, of going through experiences, going through relationships, and many of our relationships in life, and we could spend a few minutes talking about relationships and how they change. And I guess the best place to begin is for all of us. We begin as those infants that we were just talking about, and we come into this life experience as infants, and then we move into the next phase of our lives, and it seems like we're always going through phases, doesn't it?
Yeah, so there's lots of satires on how we grow, and I remember a cartoon, Ebb and Flow. So we have this ebb and flow in life, and if we can just stay calm and go through all the things smoothly, then the new beginnings will be more obvious to us. Because sometimes we are so depressed with the ending of things that we can't see the wonderful, glorious new beginnings. But I wouldn't know how to express to people to be able to look for those, would you?
Well, I think we have to begin to look for new beginnings whenever we have a feeling of loss and melancholy, whenever there's a seeming end to something. And I'm just thinking about, I was at a cocktail party recently, and I was talking to a couple who are good friends of mine, and their last child, they had three beautiful children. They have three beautiful children, and the last one has gone off to college now this year. And the husband was telling me, oh, I'm just so glad that, and I won't name the name just in case they would watch, but I'm just so glad that he's gone. It was wonderful having him in the house, but now it's the last child is gone, and we're going to travel, and we're going to do the house the way we want. And he had all kinds of great plans for what was going to happen and how he and his wife were going to enjoy their life. And I'm sure they enjoyed being parents, but to him it was the fact that parenting was over, and now he was free for the first time in these many years. And sometime later, I was speaking to his wife, and I said, I understand that your baby has gone off to college. And she said, oh, yes, and she was so sad. I could tell that she was sad about it. And I said, well, you don't seem at all as happy as your husband. And she said, oh, well, he's happy, but I'm not. And she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And she proceeded to tell me how depressing it was for her, because she said her husband had his work, and he went out every day, but she had been a housewife or had taken care of the house for all of these years and had taken care of the children. And now her life was at really a significant crossroad, and she had come to a major ending. where of course he was able to see nothing but beginnings, but she was seeing the ending of her relationship with her children, the
Mhm.
ending of possibly her youth as she saw it. And so for her, it was very, very difficult. And so I think when we find ourselves in the situation of really being saddened about something that has come to an end, that's a time to create within ourselves a wake-up call to being open to new beginnings. And I'm not at all saying that we ought not to grieve.
Yeah.
And that grieving process is very important. We ought to feel the way we need to feel.
Mhm.
She needs to feel a little sad, and she needs to bring closure to that part of her life. And so I'm not at all suggesting that people don't feel the way they feel. Feelings are valid.
I know exactly what you're saying, and that's true, that it's a part of life's process. And if we don't feel a little sad at what's just ended, then we haven't really enjoyed that part of our lives. And so it's a normal thing to feel sad, but that the philanthropic organizations throughout the country are are fielded by women in that position. And so it's a wonderful thing that there's so many places we can put our energy when and she might even get out and find employment. But more than that, she might, there would be, regardless of what city she lives in, there are many places she could put her energies and to good, and to very good profit for those organizations. And that's how in this country, there's greater volunteerism than in any other country in the world. And it's just because people have the initiative to go ahead and do things after their own families, women are able to, after their own families are raised, or men are able to, after they get a handle on their work and then have some time to do that.
Right. And this willingness to be open to new beginnings and open to newness of life is sometimes a challenge because most of us are not very open to change, period, let alone a new experience. And of course, going back to this lady, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on her, but if for her to get out of the house is going to be a new experience.
Hmm.
And just as you said, if she went back to the workforce,
Hmm.
she probably hasn't worked, if she did work, for 20 or 30 years. And so, or 20 or 25 years, I should say.
Hmm.
So that being open and willing to do things, and sometimes we have to be in looking at new beginnings, we have to be open and willing to do things that maybe frighten us a little bit, and that's a good kind of fear. And there are bad fears and there are good fears, but being a little fearful but facing those fears and going forward in a valiant and resolute way is really what we need to do when we move into new beginnings in our lives.
Hmm. Well, we can all look back on our own lives and see where we made choices. And I know at one time I decided to go back to school and get my degrees, and it was a time that I could. Where much earlier on I could have, but I was too lazy to combine motherhood and being a wife and being a student. But many people do that and very successfully. So we can choose our own timing, and we're lucky if we're able to choose our own timing for the things we want to do. But when we're faced with a crisis in our lives, if we remember that the new beginning that's offered to us is so exciting and so worthwhile and so mysterious, that then we drop the sadness from as you expressed about that lady, from having the door close on certain type of existence. So we just need to have faith that we know that everything is going to work well, and then do whatever we feel like doing.
Right. You touched on a good point that I'd like to spend a little time on, and that is that life is a mystery, isn't it?
Yes.
And we just need to understand that and accept it. And out of the mystery of life, we need to be open to the fact that there are going to be endings and there are going to be new
Hmm.
beginnings. And so, if in the mystery of life we don't spend a lot of time worrying about why things happened,
Hmm.
or trying to delve into the sources of the problem or the sources of the end of the relationship or situation, but instead we're simply open to the fact that something new is going to happen and something new is
Hmm.
happening and emerging in our lives.
Yes, and always something new is happening, and sometimes we might think it's not too good, but sometimes we will see that that was the best thing that ever happened. But again, it's all in our own minds, and new beginnings are what we make of them, because we all face new beginnings constantly. Every day is a new beginning. Every birthday is a new beginning. Every Christmas or every holiday is a new beginning. So when we can be joyous and open and accepting, then that new beginning will just be a wonderful advent in our lives. And if we close down and don't have those positive aspects coming through our consciousness, then that's what makes us feel less than adequate.
Right. I can think of some people that I've talked to over the years who have lost their jobs. And of course, that's a devastating situation. And when they think that they're at the end of a situation and there's no hope, and one of the things that I often say to those people is that I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that something wonderful is going to happen out of this experience. And of course, they're very kind to me and they listen to me, but I truly believe that. And the fact is that in many instances and in most cases, that truly happens, unless, of course, they stop that from happening. And I'm thinking about one woman who was on her own. She was a single woman approaching midlife who lived here in Long Beach for a number of years and loved it here and had lived here all of her life. And her job transferred her to Kansas, and she had never been to Kansas, had no desire to go to Kansas, was unhappy, but she felt that she needed to go in order to maintain the seniority and the security of her job. And she was just so unhappy that she was giving up Long Beach and giving up her condominium here and giving up her friends that she had here. And off she went to Kansas. And she got to Kansas and fell into the new position in the same company, but the new location. She loved her boss. She was not really very fond of her boss here. She got a wonderful apartment within walking distance of where she worked, which she'd never had before. So she didn't have any kind of a commute. And then on top of that, she met who was later to be the gentleman who was later to become her husband. So out of that ending here came this wonderful thing. And so here in her life, when she had even given up the idea of finding a mate, she found all of those things in the process of ending one thing and beginning a new. And in her case, she didn't have a conscious awareness of the new beginnings. But as I look back on that story, and as she wrote to me later about finding her husband and actually looking on the experience of the move as the most magnificent thing that happened in her life, it was indeed a new beginning that gave her a whole new life.
And I'll bet she had a consciousness of an adventure, like, let's make it an adventure. And probably whatever you said to her helped her in that way. And very often we can help people so much just by our own positive attitude, letting it rub off on someone else when they're on a down moment. And then we can be inspired by other people's words, whether it's written words or taped or in person. And so it's around robin, isn't it, how we help each other?
We do. We help each other by the things we say. And I think we all have an opportunity to say something positive and supportive when people are faced with endings and are open or are on the precipice of a new beginning. And people need to be reminded of that something good can come of this experience and that newness is good. In fact, and of course, going back to the baby, we have no problem seeing a new baby as being good.
Yeah.
But we have problems seeing the newness of our own experience as being good. And every experience that's fresh and new can be good and wonderful. And we need those fresh and new experiences. So many of us spend our lives in the ruts of life, that's a real danger. And so we need to be open to the newness. We need to be open to new experiences. We need to be willing to let go of certain things and to move on.
Yes, and never say, why did this happen to me? Because we know why it happened to us because of some very good reason. But we don't have to feel sorry for ourselves. And when we do, then we're pulling in the negative energy around ourselves, and then we're just becoming more dark. Where if we look for the mystery of it and look for some positive aspect occurring, a new beginning, then we can face changes.
Right. And what we always say when we're talking to people that we're counseling and working with is when people ask why something has happened, that's not the right question. When people ask why, it's typically not looking for an answer, it's looking for an argument. And that's the way it is. But what people need to do whenever they find themselves asking them, why did this happen? They instead need to say, what is it that I need to do because of this?
Yeah.
It's not the why of any experience, it's the what of the experience. And the what is, what shall I do to make this experience good, and what shall I do to get the most out of it?
Yes, and what am I supposed to learn from this? And very often when people ask that question, they see a light through the tunnel because they ask a positive question and expected a positive answer.
And we usually get what we expect, don't we? We'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you the opportunity to receive some literature so that you can continue to study the ideas and concepts we're sharing with you.
We would like to give you the opportunity to explore and discover in your own home the new thought teachings that this program is sharing with you by sending you a free copy of one of these booklets. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807. Whatever your dream, whatever your vision, you can reach it through confident living.
Before the break, we were talking about how important it is not to ask why. And so many times we do that, don't we? We ask why.
Yes, we do. And I think that's human nature to ask why. But if we can ask why in a positive way and look for the good and praise it, then it's okay to ask why because we're doing it in a positive way. But when we say, "Why me, Lord?" then that puts a whole different light onto it, or lack of light, I should say. And so it makes a difference how we're asking our questions and from what frame of reference we're coming within our own beinghood.
Right, and the answer to the why me is why not me.
Yeah.
Yes. So we all are going to have experiences in life, and we're all going to have those times when we do question why these things have happened. But the fact is that when negative things happen, when painful things happen, when losses and come and limits and illness and all of the other things and challenges, they come. And they're there,
Yeah.
and we have to do something with them. And they're really a call to us to change our way of thinking and to open ourselves to a new beginning. And we don't know what that new beginning is. And so often we think that someone's going to tell us, that it's going to be our spouse or our employer or our coworker or our confidant or our minister or a counselor. But in fact, no one can tell us that, can they? We would like people to tell us, but really we don't need them to tell us. We need to understand and realize that the answer can come to us if we simply open ourselves to the newness of the experience.
Yes, well, that would be the only way we would learn and grow is if the answer did come to us. And I know people who want answers given to them all the time. And we have the meditation meetings at our church, and the people who come there and meditate are looking for answers, and they can ask questions during their meditation and get their answers. And it's a wonderful thing to know that we can go home to God at any moment and have a new beginning. And that's what a new beginning is. It's getting answers from our own inner sources and getting those answers ourselves and not asking other people, but just knowing, just having the confidence that what comes to us is true and good and advisable and wonderful and workable.
Yes, and you and I try very hard not to tell people what to do, don't we?
Exactly.
We don't give advice. We're not advice givers.
Exactly.
And we think that God and divine providence are very capable of letting people know what they need to do, that we're not needed in that process. So if people are able to access this information themselves, I think one of the things that we could spend a little time on in the last part of the program here is talking just about what you mentioned. That's meditation, which is a wonderful, wonderful adjunct to opening ourselves to new beginnings.
Yes, it is, because I've seen it happen many different times, not only in my own life, but in the lives of others, where they ask questions, receive answers, follow through on that, and it's a new beginning for them in all areas of life. And so we have to have the confidence that what we're hearing is right and good, that not that we have to ask someone else. Why should we ask someone else? Because we know our own inner high self knows everything that we need to know and can bring through that which we need to know. And so if we just have the confidence, I was thinking something a moment ago that I think what you and I do when we counsel people is we inspire them to live from their own highest self. And I think that's what I know you said, well, we don't tell them what to do, and true, we don't. But we do inspire them to know that whatever is needed is within themselves, and then they can go on from there. Would you say that's true?
I'd say it's very true. And I think we also spend a lot of time helping people to sort out their thought process. And I think that therein lies the problem for all of us, is the pattern of our mind, or as the founders of our philosophy and movement would have called it, the mind dynamic. And that is, every one of us has a dynamic to our mind, the way that our minds operate. And some people's minds just operate in a very negative, defeatist way. And so by changing the way that our minds operate, and allowing our thought processes to be processes, to move us from one place to another, we can help people to recondition their way of thinking about themselves, about life, about those around them, about God, about all of the things that it takes to make a prosperous, happy, joyful, and empowered life. And it all comes about through the dynamic of mind. And
Yeah.
it's that issue of mind. And so you're absolutely right that it is helping people to connect, as we've said so often before, their mind with divine mind. And when our human mind and our consciousness, our spiritual consciousness, are aligned with the divine mind of God or the divine mind of infinite wisdom and intelligence, then all of the answers come. And our thinking is always right, and our actions are always right, and we're able to move through the process of thought in a right way.
Yes, and the way the path to that end is through prayer, meditation, chanting. Many people chant, and it serves the same purpose.
Breathing.
The deep breathing, and the contemplation, and then just the samadhi, just being at one with Creator God. But all those different paths are upward paths, and they lead to God, and they lead to satisfaction within our own selfhood, of knowing that what we're doing is right, and being self-sufficient and self-responsible.
And so much of it has to do with from a spiritual level, on a spiritual level, and on a psychological and mental level. It has to do with the melting today of Eastern and Western techniques. And I think, here in the West, we're so good at prayer, although I don't know that we are. But we think we're so good at prayer. At least we can recite them
At least
properly.
we spend hours doing it.
But the meditation, the aspect of meditation, and the aspect of silence, and the aspect of centering, and the aspect of contemplation, in some way we've decided in the West that those things belong to contemplative nuns and monks, or they belong to Eastern gurus who sit on mountaintops or under trees. The fact is that we all of us, East and West, rich and poor, of all socioeconomic, ethnic, and religious backgrounds, all of us have the ability to draw upon this integration of Eastern and Western philosophy and spirituality to bring about this connection that you have put so well and that we say so often in the movement of our higher self. If we can connect with our higher self, then that's certainly a new beginning, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And we can live from that highest aspect of our own beinghood just by living in a positive way, just by looking at all things as a new beginning, instead of dwelling on the ending, dwelling on the negative aspect, just to be in consciousness in a positive way as a new beginning. And everything is a new beginning. It's like when we eat a meal, it's a new beginning. It's rebuilding of our bodies. And if we would look at life in that way when we're feeling in a negative way, then it would make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it changes the entire view that we have of the world. Now, it doesn't necessarily change the world, but it changes the view, doesn't it?
Yes, and as you say, always, we live in our minds and not in the world. And so it changes our lives. What is life-changing is our own mental attitude. What's life-changing is the way we look at the world around us. And if we want to change our lives, then we change ourselves and not try and change others. And that's one thing in counseling we always stress, is that you can't change other people, don't try. Change your own attitude. And it's not just counseling work, but it's in life itself. It's if we look to ourselves and make the changes, and some have to be mental, some have to be physical. Perhaps we need to change the way we're eating, or the way we indulge in luxuries, or whatever it might be. We have to look to ourselves and make those changes. And then we have positive new beginnings.
And it is an issue of self-responsibility.
Yeah.
It is an issue of absolute self-responsibility for our own new beginnings and directions in life. And that doesn't take anything away from God. So often people think, because we talk about this, that we're taking away from God. But self-responsibility actually is a God concept.
Yes, and it's God-given, and it's our right. It's part of our free will of making our choices. And we have to be responsible for the choices we make.
And we are totally and completely responsible for those choices because they are outpictured in our life. We're creating our own life, and wherever we are, whatever circumstance or situation we find ourselves in, that is where we have brought ourselves in this life experience.
Yes. I was reading something I think it was in the newspaper today, or somewhere I was reading today about how to help people who have low incomes to have a more enriched life. And it said buy in thrift shops. And if you have to spend a certain amount of money for clothing, a certain amount for all those many things. So they were giving pointers on how people can. And I thought, how exciting that people are coming up with common sense ideas on how families can stretch their budgets so that they have more, and we have to make our children be happy with less expensive items, and teach them the value of values, not of whatever costs the most money, because very often what costs the most money might be name brands, whether it's food or clothing or shelter or whatever. So we can teach those around us, those children and younger people, and less fortunate, that how to make a difference in their lives. And isn't that a wonderful thing that I think the consciousness of humankind has risen to the point that we're being practical and also helpful, and then people who have less money to spend on necessities would not feel so disenfranchised, but feel fortunate to have what they do have.
And this whole issue of being able to create within our minds a sense of peace in the midst of wherever we are is really so very important. And I think we're doing that today as a people much better than we have before.
I think so too. So many people say we're living in a time of gloom, 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 but I don't think so. I think there's more light in the world. More people are living the life, and sure, we have terrible things happening. We have burglaries and murders and a lot of bad things, but hasn't it always been that way? I think there's less of it today. And one way we can see that there's less of it is people are feeling more indignant when bad things happen to other people, not just to themselves and their own families.
And so it is a new beginning for humankind at this point in time, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And the new millennium is that. And it wouldn't matter if the new millennium is what date it starts or will have started. It's how we face this new beginning that matters.
And we can choose to have a new beginning anytime we choose to change the way that we think. And so we hope that you found the information that we've shared with you useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.